All right, let's talk about something that has thrown the Republican Party into full-blown panic mode. We're talking about Donald Trump's MRI, his medical records, his health, and what's being hidden from the American people. And the wild part, this entire political firestorm started with just 3 words posted on Sunday by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz: release the MRI results. That's it. 3 simple words, and the entire Republican establishment absolutely lost it. They had a collective meltdown. Why? Because suddenly millions of Americans started asking the exact questions Trump's circle has been desperately trying to avoid. Is the president okay? Is he mentally sharp? Is he physically capable of doing the job? And what is he hiding? Here's what's really going on. Back in October, Trump made a quiet trip to Walter Reed Military Medical Center. That's the facility presidents visit when something serious is happening. Trump later revealed he had received an MRI, which on its own isn't unusual. People get MRIs all the time. The problem is that when reporters asked him what part of his body was scanned and why he needed it, Trump gave an answer that made absolutely no sense. He said, "I have no idea. It was just an MRI." Think about that. The President of the United States undergoes a major medical scan at the nation's top military hospital and claims he doesn't know what it was for. That answer didn't calm concerns. It blew them wide open. Then Trump said something that instantly set off alarm bells across the country. He told reporters, "Yeah, it wasn't the brain because I took a cognitive test and I aced it. I got a perfect mark." Think about that. No one asked him about his brain. No one suggested anything was wrong with his cognition. Yet his first instinct was to defend his brain health. That's what psychologists call a defensive tell. When you deny something before anyone brings it up because you're already worried people are thinking it. And here's the kicker. Trump claims he doesn't know which part of his body was scanned. The President of the United States goes to Walter Reed, undergoes an MRI, a serious medical procedure that takes an hour or more, and then says he has no idea what the doctors were checking. Can anyone imagine going to a hospital, getting a major scan, and walking out not knowing what it was for? It's absurd, and Republicans know it's absurd. That's exactly why they're panicking now. The White House keeps insisting Trump is in exceptional health. They insist the MRI results were perfect, but they won't release them. They won't say what the MRI was for. They won't explain why a routine physical in April suddenly required an additional Walter Reed evaluation in October. The secrecy doesn't match the story, and the American people are noticing. Nearly half the country has now heard about the MRI controversy, and they're asking the same questions. What's even more revealing is how Trump reacted to Tim Walz's simple 3-word request: release the MRI results. Instead of transparency, Trump attacked. He insulted Walz. He called him incompetent. He tried to change the subject to immigration and Somali refugees, anything to avoid discussing the MRI itself. This is classic Trump. When he's cornered, he doesn't address the issue. He attacks the messenger, and that reaction tells you something. If the MRI showed nothing concerning, he would have released it immediately. Instead, he went into panic mode. Now, here's what medical experts are saying, and this is critical. A former White House physician has stated Trump spent at least 4 hours at Walter Reed during that October visit. 4 hours. That is not a quick routine exam. That is a significant, potentially serious medical evaluation. And Trump didn't even mention it until reporters pressed him days later. He didn't volunteer any of this information. It slipped out by accident. And that raises the real question. What else was he at Walter Reed for? If this was just basic blood work and a routine physical, why spend 4 hours in the hospital? Why require advanced imaging? And why hide it from the public unless there's something he doesn't want Americans to know? The former White House physician also highlighted something crucial. Trump claims he doesn't remember which part of his body was scanned. But MRIs aren't the kind of thing you forget. You know if they're imaging your head, your chest, your spine, your abdomen. It's obvious. The fact that he pretends he doesn't know raises two possibilities. Either his memory is failing or he's lying. And neither one is acceptable from a sitting president. What makes this even more infuriating is Trump's long record of secrecy. He refused to release his tax returns. He refuses to release full medical records. He refuses to be transparent about his health in the way every modern president is expected to be. Yes, past presidents hid conditions. JFK's back, Reagan's early Alzheimer's, but those were different eras. Today, transparency is the standard. Trump simply refuses to meet it. He believes the rules don't apply to him, and Republicans are helping him keep the American public in the dark. But here's where it gets truly explosive, and why Republicans are panicking. Governor Tim Walz cornered Trump with three simple words: release the MRI results. And Trump immediately responded, if they want to release it, it's okay with me. So now the obvious question is, if it's okay with you, then why haven't you released it? If everything is perfect, show it. If you ace the cognitive test, prove it. But Trump can't, because the moment those MRI results are released, independent medical experts will examine them line by line, journalists will scrutinize them, specialists will weigh in. It won't just be Trump's loyal doctors saying, he's fine. There will be real oversight, and that's exactly what he's trying to avoid. What we're watching right now is pure Republican panic over Trump's viability as a candidate heading into the next election cycle. They're worried, and for good reason. At 79 years old, Trump is the oldest person to ever take office. He's older than Biden was when Biden withdrew from the race. And there is growing legitimate concern, even among Republicans, about whether Trump is physically and mentally capable of enduring another campaign, let alone another 4 years in office. That's why the MRI is such a massive story. It's not just about a single medical test. It's about whether the American people can trust anything they're being told about their president's health. And right now they can't. There's no transparency, only deflection and secrecy. What's almost painful to watch is how Republicans are scrambling on TV trying to defend this. You see them on the Sunday shows with excuses so weak they barely hold together. Oh, the MRI was part of routine screening. But Trump already had his routine physical in April. Oh, we're just following Biden's lead, except Biden released far more medical information than Trump ever has. Oh, the president is in perfect health. Then why not release the proof? It's circular logic. It collapses under its own weight, and they know it. But they're stuck, because Republican loyalty today means you do not ask questions. You do not demand transparency. You simply defend Trump no matter what. The real sign of panic is how aggressively they attack Walz and the media for even raising the issue. If they were confident Trump was fine, they'd release the MRI and shut the conversation down. Instead, they lash out, they dodge, they attack anyone asking perfectly reasonable questions. That is the behavior of people who have something to hide. And let's be honest, nobody loves talking about a president's age or health. It's uncomfortable, it's sensitive, it feels invasive. But this isn't small talk. This is the commander-in-chief. This is national security. This is whether the most powerful office on earth is being occupied by someone mentally and physically capable of doing the job. We deserve clarity. Trump's refusal to be transparent, mixed with his increasingly erratic behavior, is setting off alarm bells. The midnight truth social rants, the bizarre attacks, the rambling claims about Venezuela, the contradictions, the confusion, none of it is normal. That's why Republicans are spiraling. That's why they're terrified of the MRI story. Because once the public starts asking about Trump's health, they start noticing everything else too. The way his speech drifts, the random moments of confusion, the sudden trips to Walter Reed. Once you pull that thread, the whole sweater starts to unravel. And that's the real danger for Republicans. Once people start questioning Trump's health, they start noticing everything else. They start scrutinizing his stamina, his behavior, his late-night rants. They start paying attention, and for the GOP, that's a nightmare. The more Americans focus on Trump's fitness, the less they're focused on the issues Republicans would rather push. That's the calculation. That's why the panic is real. Now let me explain exactly what Tim Walz said, because this is the moment that sent Republicans into full meltdown mode. On Sunday morning, Walz appeared on NBC's Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, and he didn't hold back. He said, "Here we got a guy on Thanksgiving, where we spent time with our families. We ate, we played Yahtzee, we cheered for football, and this guy is apparently in a room ranting about everything else. This is not normal behavior. It is not healthy." That line cut deep because Walz wasn't being dramatic. He was stating the obvious. A normal president spends Thanksgiving with loved ones, or at least behaves like a stable head of state. Trump, meanwhile, was on Truth Social at midnight, unleashing an unhinged tirade, attacking Walz with a slur, attacking Somali refugees, attacking immigration policy, attacking anyone who crossed his mind. That is not normal presidential conduct. It's erratic, impulsive, and troubling. Walz didn't stop there. He added, "It's clear the president is fading physically. The mental capacity, again, ranting crazily at midnight on Thanksgiving about everything else. There are reasons for us to be concerned. I am deeply concerned that he is incapable of doing the job." Strong words, but they were backed by specifics. Walz highlighted Trump's bizarre holiday meltdown, his contradiction-riddled comments about his MRI, and his refusal to release medical records the way every modern president has. He pointed out something Republicans desperately want voters to ignore. Trump is the only president in recent history who refuses to release both his tax returns and his full medical history. And the GOP has no explanation for that. None. They can't defend why Trump gets to hide information every other president has made public. They can't justify why transparency suddenly doesn't matter. So instead of answering the questions, they attack the people asking them. The Republicans keep shouting fake news and witch hunt, but none of that actually answers the real question. And Governor Tim Walz made a brilliant point about Trump's MRI. He asked, "Has anyone in the history of the world ever had an MRI and not known what it was for?" Of course not. Nobody gets a major medical test without knowing why, except apparently Donald Trump. His claim that he doesn't know what part of his body was scanned is absurd. He's either lying or his memory truly is slipping. And neither possibility is good for someone serving as president. Trump's response? He didn't clarify anything. Instead, he attacked Walz, calling him an incompetent governor, repeating the same slur he used on Thanksgiving and ranting about immigration and Somali refugees. But he never addressed the real issue, why he won't release his medical records or why he pretends not to know what his own MRI was for. That's classic Trump. Attack the messenger, avoid the question. What's surprising is that even some Republicans are beginning to feel uncomfortable. Indiana State Senator Mike Braun said Trump shouldn't use slurs in public statements. It wasn't a major rebellion, but it showed cracks inside the GOP. Privately, many Republicans are uneasy about Trump's behavior, his late-night rants, and especially his lack of transparency about his health. They won't say it loudly, but the concern is there. And what sparked all of this? A Thanksgiving meltdown. Trump couldn't simply spend the holiday with his family. Instead, he jumped onto Truth Social at midnight and launched into a bitter, chaotic rant about walls and immigration. That one decision made the entire country start questioning his stability. If he had stayed quiet for just one night, none of this would have escalated. But he didn't. And now the questions about his health, his memory, and his fitness for office are louder than ever. But Trump couldn't help himself. He had to rant. He had to attack. He had to dominate the conversation. And now he's backed himself into a corner where he's being forced to defend his health and his medical records. What makes this so ridiculous is that it's completely preventable. Trump could release his medical records tomorrow. He could publish the MRI results tomorrow. He could end the speculation instantly, but he won't, because that's not who he is. Trump never admits anything, never backs down, never acknowledges being wrong. So instead of simply providing the information and proving he's fine, he keeps fighting. He keeps attacking anyone who asks questions. He keeps dodging and spinning. And the more evasive he is, the more suspicious people become. That's how this works. This is why Republicans are in full panic mode right now. They know that if Trump's health becomes the central political story heading into the midterms or the next election, it's a disaster for them. It rattles their base, gives Democrats ammunition, and creates a narrative they can't control because Trump refuses to do the one thing that would shut it down, be transparent. So instead, they're stuck defending a president who won't defend himself with the basic standard medical disclosures every other modern president has provided. It's a mess, and watching them try to spin their way through it is honestly unbelievable. But here's where things get even more serious. This isn't just about Trump and Walz exchanging insults. This is about the state of Trump's health and what it means for the country. The MRI controversy is only one part of a growing pattern. Back in July, Trump was diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency, a condition where the valves in your veins don't work properly, causing blood to pool. It's common in older adults, but it's also a clear sign of aging. Then there were the unexplained bruises on his hands, reports of him seeming confused or disoriented in meetings with world leaders. The moment at the 9/11 memorial where his face appeared droopy, sparking speculation about a possible stroke. One incident alone might be ignored, but taken together, these episodes form a troubling pattern. And medical experts have started raising legitimate questions. When professionals, people who understand the signs, look at these incidents and say, this needs to be explained, that's not partisan politics. That's concern. And because Trump refuses to be transparent, those concerns grow louder. There's a psychiatry professor at Mount Sinai Medical School, Jacob Appel, who specializes in presidential health, and he weighed in on this situation in a way that cuts right to the core of the issue. Appel said that if Trump is going to release pieces of medical information, like announcing he had an MRI, then he has a responsibility to release enough information for the public to actually understand what's going on. You can't just say you had an MRI, call it perfect, and then refuse to explain what it was for or allow independent doctors to review it. That's not transparency. That's how you create suspicion. And Appel is absolutely right. Then a former White House physician stepped in and pointed out something even more troubling. The timeline doesn't add up. Trump was at Walter Reed for at least 4 hours, but an MRI, basic blood work, and a routine physical don't take 4 hours. If anything, you could do all of that in under an hour. So, what else was he there for? What other tests or procedures happened that the public hasn't been told about? Those are legitimate questions, and the Trump administration hasn't answered any of them. Instead, they've just said he's healthy and moved on, but the public isn't moving on. They want answers, and they're not getting them. What this really highlights is how dramatically Trump has broken from the transparency standards of previous presidents. For decades, if there were questions about a president's health, the White House would call a press conference. The president's physician would come out, answer questions openly, provide records, and allow independent medical experts to look at them. It was organized, professional, transparent. Trump doesn't do that. Instead, he keeps everything behind closed doors. He releases tiny fragments of information, contradicts himself, makes vague statements, and then demands that the American people simply trust him. But that's not how a modern presidency works. The American people have a right to know whether their president is physically and mentally capable of doing the job. They have a right to know about serious health issues that could impact national security, decision-making, or continuity of government. And Trump's refusal to be transparent, combined with the bizarre, unexplained details around his medical visits, only raises more questions about what's really going on. And Trump's refusal to provide that transparency is, by itself, deeply suspicious. It signals that he's hiding something, that there's information he doesn't want the American people to see. And that, more than anything, is what's causing panic inside Republican circles. What makes the timing even more striking is that this is happening after Trump has already been in office for about a year. Republicans can't keep blaming Biden for everything anymore. They've used that excuse for the economy, for immigration, for every crisis that's come up since Trump took over. But Trump's health isn't Biden's fault. Trump's behavior isn't Biden's fault. Trump's refusal to release medical information isn't Biden's fault. Those are Trump's decisions, and Republicans can't hide behind their go-to talking point this time. What's really happening is that Republicans are finally beginning to realize that Trump may be a much bigger liability than they expected heading into the next election cycle. They thought his presidency would give them strength and stability, and maybe it did for a moment. But now his age is a problem. His health is a problem. His erratic public behavior is a growing problem. And his total refusal to be transparent is the biggest problem of all. They're beginning to wonder whether he can actually win again, or whether he's going to drag the entire party down with him. And here's the tragic part. None of this needed to happen. If Trump had been transparent about his health from day one, if he had released his medical records, allowed independent physicians to review them, and followed the standards every modern president has followed, this wouldn't be a crisis. People could have made informed judgments based on facts. Instead, Trump chose secrecy, ambiguity, and denial. And now Republicans are stuck defending a president they themselves no longer fully trust. Instead, Trump's secrecy has created a vacuum, and when there's a vacuum, people fill it with speculation. They start wondering, they start connecting dots, they start noticing patterns, and eventually they start asking hard questions. That's exactly what has happened here. Trump's refusal to be transparent has created the very crisis he's now facing. So the real story isn't simply that Trump might have health issues. The real story is that he refuses to be honest about them, which makes the public suspicious and leaves Republicans scrambling for explanations they don't have. The real story is that the American people are asking legitimate questions and getting nothing but deflection and attacks in return. That's the core of the problem. And that's why this issue isn't going away anytime soon. Because you cannot run a democracy on secrecy. You cannot run a government by hiding basic information. You cannot demand trust when you refuse to earn it. Eventually, people stop buying the excuses and start demanding answers. That's exactly where we are right now. And let me be real with you. There's far more going on in Washington than just the MRI scandal. The Trump administration is in full-blown chaos. You've got Hegseth, the defense secretary, under scrutiny for potential war crimes. Military strikes are being investigated for violating international law. FBI officials are openly discussing using the agency to target political opponents. There are threats of government shutdowns. Tariffs are driving up prices right before the holidays. Groceries are more expensive. Families are struggling. Under normal circumstances, any one of those issues would dominate the news cycle. But somehow the MRI story has cut through everything else. And the reason is simple. It symbolizes something deeper. It represents Trump's complete unwillingness to be accountable, his belief that he doesn't have to follow the rules, his insistence on secrecy, denial, and deflection. The MRI isn't just about his health, it's about his entire approach to governing. Everything is hidden, everything is a fight, everything is a battle. So when people ask about the MRI, they're not just asking about a medical test. They're asking, why won't this guy ever just be straight with us? Why is everything a cover-up? Why does every simple question turn into a political war? And that is the real panic for Republicans. That's what's keeping them awake at night. Not that Trump might have a health issue. Everyone has something at 79 years old. The real panic is that Trump refuses to be transparent about anything. He refuses to follow the norms every other modern president has followed. He refuses to give the American people basic information and let them decide for themselves. That's not how you run a government. That's not how you maintain trust. That's how you create an environment filled with suspicion, confusion, and fear. And that's bad for Trump, bad for Republicans, and bad for the country. So that's where we are. That's what's driving all this chaos around the MRI. It's not actually about one medical test. It's about transparency, accountability, and whether a president is willing to follow the basic standards expected of the office. Trump isn't. And Republicans are stuck defending a man who could end the entire controversy simply by releasing the information. Instead, he refuses, and every day he refuses, the panic grows louder. This story isn't over. It's not going away. Every day Trump doesn't release that MRI or his full medical records is another day people ask what he's hiding. Another day Republicans privately wonder whether their candidate can even make it through another election. That's how these political storms grow. Transparency closes questions, secrecy multiplies them, and Trump chose secrecy. So here we are. Thanks for following this. Thanks for caring about transparency. That's what keeps democracy alive. Keep watching, stay informed, stay engaged. That's all any of us can do.